wrote 2/3 of the books, if not more, ratio-wise. Greatest missionary. He says to keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations that God gives him. There was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, Paul says, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses. I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I am strong. Why? Because it's not his own strength. It's the strength of God in him. Can we say we delight in our weaknesses? Can we say we delight in insults, hardships, persecutions, difficulties? Can we say we delight in the fact that we are inadequate and helpless sometimes? Paul could delight in it because then he got to see God work. And he got to know the reality of God, thinking he was worthy of working in and working through. Jesus understands all about human weakness, fragility, inadequacies. Jesus knows all about being a human because he became one. Hebrews 4:15 and 16 says, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we might receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Our time of need, our time of feeling inadequate, our time when we feel fragile, our time when we feel we cannot do something. God gives us a spirit that overcomes our fear of failure. Secondly, this morning I want us to examine the fact that God gives us a spirit of love when we feel faint. A spirit of love when we feel faint. John 15:9, we see Jesus' words, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So now remain in my love. Remain in my love. How do we remain in his love? Doesn't he love us always? Of course he does. But we remain in the protection of his love. We remain in the strength of his love when we make him our first love. What is sin? Sin is disobedience to the known will of God, or lack of doing what God wants us to do, or doing what we know God doesn't want us to do, in layman's terms. Does God still love us? Of course he still loves us. He still offers us forgiveness. But we separate ourselves, we separate the power flow of him in and through our lives when we separate ourselves from his will. When we come into disobedience and rebellion to him. Jesus says, remain in my love. His other words were, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. One of the ways, the primary way, actually the only way, that we truly show our love for Christ is in how we are obedient to him. Whether what he says is our compass. Whether what he calls us to do is our instruction. and whether we let him drive. When we do that, we remain under the cover of his love because his power has not been interrupted. So when he gives us a spirit that overcomes our fear of failure, just like when he equips us with anything, if we interrupt the flow of that power, fear will creep in. We need to get ourselves back in line with Jesus' will. And the fear will dissipate because the fear cannot stand against the Spirit of God. He gives us a spirit of love. His love, when his love is overwhelming our spirit, when we are just inundated with how much God loves us, we have no reason to fear anything. When we get weak, when we feel faint, we don't think we can face another day. When we allow his love to break through, and when we love him back, the power of that love overcomes. Matthew 14, 26 and 27. Here's what happens. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they're out in the boat. Waves are crashing around. They were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. Why? Because they saw him walking on the water out to them. And they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." In the storms of life, when the waves are tossing our boat, sometimes God is allowing our boat to get tossed to catch our attention. Sometimes God is letting our boat get tossed, not because he wants to hurt us, but because he wants us to experience his power and his care for us. That we might see, once again, his love is there to carry us. We get into these places in life and it's like, I'm afraid. And he says, what are you afraid of? I'm here with you. When he's walking on the water out towards the disciples, it wasn't some apparition coming at him. It was Jesus Christ himself. And he says, don't fear, it's I. Sometimes in the midst of the storms of our life, when we're afraid of what's going to happen next. What's going to happen next? And Jesus is right there saying, don't worry. I'm in this thing. It's me in the middle of this storm. I'm going to take care of you. The spirit of love that comes when we feel faint. A sense of his love and an ability for us to love others. When we don't have the strength, to put away our hurts that other people have caused us, Jesus has the love to fill us up so that we can. When we're too weak to let go of our need to see justice done to people that are doing bad things, God can give us peace to put it in his hands and give us the strength to go on. When we're too faint, he'll give us a spirit of love. And love overcomes all things. Thirdly, he will give us a spirit of self-discipline when we falter. Paul was intimately acquainted, and we looked at that passage earlier about the thorn. He was intimately acquainted with what it is to falter. He was the most prolific writer in the Bible about grace because he understood God's grace so well. He understood his need for God's grace so well. He could write about grace because he'd been there. And he admitted that he still was there.